All right, so today I wanted to talk about an interesting tweet that I seen from Droid 1963 here, saying, liberals, we need affordable housing. Also, liberals, we're going to put a carbon tax on everything so that any material that is manufactured for and delivered to a home building site becomes more expensive. Now, again, I mean, for starters, this completely debunks the idea of, oh, you get the money back. Again, like that is such a stupid argument. It's not even funny. And that if you did get all the money back, then what would be the point in it? Like, what would be the point in it? They say, oh, it's going to make the big polluters pay. Well, that's also a stupid argument because if you put a tax like this on a business, all they're going to do is just pass that cost off to the consumer. So this is the problem with the carbon tax, is that every single argument they come up with is so easily debunked. It's really not even funny. And even if you do get the money back that you pay on, let's say, groceries and home heating and stuff like that, well, you don't get the money, or sorry, the stuff you pay directly, and let's say gas and stuff like that, you still don't get the money back that you lose on other stuff. Like, you still don't get the money back you lose on other stuff. Again, it's very funny too that this is the reason that that the left doesn't really care about the poor. The reason that the left likes to claim to care about the poor is that if they pretend they care about the poor, then they know that the poor will be dumb enough to vote for them, at least on average. Always exceptions to the rule, but on average. Um, and the right kind of has the monopoly on the other side, and the left needs to play the other way, right? And the way that they continue to get elected is simply just to create more and more people in that class, right? The way that the left gets elected is by having more and more poor people that are dependent upon free stuff. This is why when you have leftist governments and right-wing governments as well, because the problem with right-wing governments is that the concept of governments as a whole is just rife for corruption and that kind of stuff. So again, regardless of who you are, I don't think either side really does a good job. But um, now that we have that out of the way, again, I wanted to talk specifically about the left, and the reason I always talk specifically about the left is that um, the right always gets their fair share of criticism, given how biased social media and the mainstream media are. But again, when it comes to the left too, is that they don't get elected if there isn't a growing amount of people that are dependent upon the government. They don't get elected, again, I'll say that again, they don't get elected if there isn't an increasing amount of people dependent upon the government. Now, again, what do I mean by that? Again, if let's just say there's a million people on welfare, there's a million people on welfare. If a government comes in and creates a bunch of really good paying jobs and 100,000 of those people come off welfare, well, again, that's 100,000 people that are now dependent upon themselves to get by. They don't need the government. So this is the thing too, that when you need the government to get by, and again, this is the reason why these people say, oh, if you don't give people free healthcare or welfare, they're going to die, right? They're going to die. Well, they're only partially right about that. The only reason they're right about that is because it's like, you take the drugs away from a drug addict, they may die. That is true, but does that mean that continuing to supply them with drugs is a good thing? And again, the same thing goes for people that are dependent upon welfare and government this and government that to get by. Is giving them this stuff actually making the problem better in the long run? Now, the reason that the left always and a lot of people support this kind of stuff is that they're too ignorant and just naive and ignorant to think about things in the long term. Because again, when you're the lower your intelligence, the lower your critical thinking skills, the more you're worried about the here and now, right? This is why government debt and money printing is through the roof right now, is because we have a population that is the population is growing, and it's growing in large part due to people that have no ability to think critically, no ability to defer gratification, and because of that, you get massive money printing. You get massive money printing because you get massive, free government this and free government that. And why is that? Is because again, you have these people that need that to get by. Now, do they technically need it? No. This is the thing too that they never tell you about welfare and free this and free that. Is that if it was gotten rid of, if the government stopped paying it, well, most of these people would just go get jobs. Like, they've done studies. I think it was in the States, in I don't remember which state it was, but they did a study of, or sorry, it was a county, I believe, that made it mandatory to do a certain amount of community service to get welfare payments. And they found that welfare got cut like more than in half. I think it was like 70 or 80% it went down. So, in other words, the majority of people on welfare, they don't actually need it to get by. They don't actually need it to get by. They're just people that they're either too lazy to work or they become so accustomed to doing what they're doing that they don't want to come off it. And this is the other problem when it comes to welfare too, is that in a lot of these areas, if you qualify for all the welfare programs, especially if you have kids, then you're making more than a minimum wage on welfare. So again, like what incentive do these people have to work? And that is the problem. That is the problem. Getting back to the main point here being in that the cost of housing, number one, I mean, the other thing they love doing is rent control, right? The problem with rent control is that in the long run, it only makes the cost of housing go up even more, because what happens when you impose rent control? Again, rent control is just another thing for people that have no ability to think critically, no ability to think about what's going to happen in the long run because they're too stupid. But what happens when you impose rent control? Well, no one wants to build a new apartment. Like no one wants to build new apartment complexes because the only reason they built them in the first place is because they knew they could make money off them. The only reason they did it in the first place is because they knew they could make money off them. So what happens is that nobody builds new apartment complexes, or they just build less, or the only ones that are built are government ones, which in which case they're going to be a lot worse. Um, so again, that's the problem when it comes to rent control. And so again, now that we have that out of the way, this is the big problem. So again, how do we make housing more affordable? Well, I think there's this would be a whole video and a series of videos in and of itself, but some just bullet points. Well, number one, we can't have so many of these regulations. Like this is another one of the reasons why the cost of housing has gone through the roof, is that talk to anybody who builds houses, electricians, plumbers, these kind of people. Talk to them about the amount of regulations that they have to follow, the amount of paperwork they have to go through to build a house. Like again, I know some of these people, so I know this for a fact. It is insane, and that is one of the reasons why the cost of housing has gone up so much. The first thing we need to do is we need to cut regulations. See, like we need to cut regulations. Number two, we need to get rid of stuff like the carbon tax. We need to get rid of any undue taxes. Like we need to get rid of any undue taxes. I mean, some other things too is that because of like globalization and this garbage too, um, we have mass immigration. And well, what do the immigrants from these other countries want to do? They all want to move into the cities. So what has happened? Well, the problem is that the government has basically opened the borders without coming up with a good enough plan beforehand to increase housing. So what has that done? That has created a much larger demand for housing than the supply can provide. And because of that, well, guess what? The cost of housing has gone through the roof. The cost of housing has gone through the roof. Like look at all these, someone who bought a house in Toronto or San Francisco or New York or Vancouver like 20, 30 years ago. Some like it could be some run of the mill 1,200, 1,500 square foot house that's now worth, upwards of $1 million. A lot of times even more, depending on where it is and what kind of shape it's in. These were houses that at the time were probably like $50,000 tops, right? Maybe 20, $30,000, at the time. Now they're $1 million houses, right? They've gone up, you know, what is it, like 50 times in 20 or 30 years, right? So this is one of the other big problems too. Like I say, it's mass immigration. And the problem with mass immigration is that the people running the governments are too incompetent, or just they just flat out don't care to, again, they're bringing in, you know, 300,000 new immigrants every year, but the increasing in housing is only 100,000 or 200,000, meaning, that's not enough to keep up with demand, meaning the cost is going to go through the roof. So again, those are some things just off the top of my head that I think would help. And the other thing too, I think also is, um, in a lot of areas, not everywhere, but again, they make it too easy. I mean, in some cases they make it too easy to get a mortgage. Some cases I think they make it too hard. I mean, especially when you look back like 10, 12 years ago in '08, they were giving away mortgages for free basically. So I think that the banking system is so bureaucratic and all this kind of stuff that again, I think you need to get rid of the bureaucracy and stuff as well. Um, but the other big problem too when it comes to housing is that people's wages haven't gone up. Like people's wages, the cost of housing is consistently going up pretty much, every year. Especially if you look on like 5 or 10 year, chunks, the cost of housing is consistently going up, especially in the big cities. But the problem is that median wages aren't going up. So again, if you want to help make housing more affordable, one of the main policy or one of the main things the government should be doing is how do we increase wages? How do we increase people's wages? And the government isn't doing any of that. Like not even conservative governments. Wages went up a little bit under Trump, I believe, but most of these Republicans and conservatives, they're no better than the Democrats and the Liberals or the NDP. They're no better, and that's the biggest problem facing society in Canada and the U.S. right now, I think, is that there is neither side, at least in the majority, actually is going to make a difference. This is the reason why I'm so concerned about society is that it doesn't matter who's in power, things aren't getting better. Things are only getting worse, at least, you know, net or sorry, gross, I mean. So again, that is the that is the big problem. That again, some things in society are getting better. Like you look at the technology and that kind of stuff is getting better. But again, median wages haven't gone up in 20 years. It's harder and harder to get a good paying job than it's ever been right now. I don't know why so many people love ignoring that. I really don't know why so many people like ignoring that. It's really, I mean, it's good for the people that already have their foot in the door, but the people that don't have their foot in the door are completely screwed. I mean, it's the same thing when it goes to, the college loan debt forgiveness thing. That the reason why so many of these people are need that have these student loans that are out of control is number one, they went for a degree that's pointless. Number two, they were told a lie that, oh, you need a degree to get ahead in society. And number three, there's so few jobs out there right now that are good paying that people can't afford to pay off their loans, or enough people that it's concerning, at least, right? So this is the big problem. Then again, like pretty much all the problems in society could be fixed by simply deregulating, cutting immigration, cutting regulations, cutting taxes, just making things easier. Stop. Essentially, I mean, they're not physically doing it, but you're essentially forced to get a college degree to get a good paying job for most of the time these days, right? Unless you're an entrepreneur, it's pretty much impossible to get a good paying job these days without a college degree. But again, that's stupid. Like again, like I pointed out a million times, but it doesn't seem to ring through to people. Like, why do you need a college degree to program a computer? Why do you need a college degree to be an accountant? It makes no sense. Like it makes no sense. Um, but anyway, like I say, if we want to make housing more affordable, one of the main things when it comes to government is how do we increase people's wages? Because again, like it or not, the housing prices in the long run are always going to go up, at least in the near future. And the only way to make things more affordable is if people are making more money to be able to afford said increased cost of housing. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. If you liked it, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. If you haven't already, make sure you check out those links below. Follow me on those other platforms if you haven't already. If you want to donate, you can do that as well. Again, I appreciate whatever support I can get, but like I say, at the very least, check out those links. Stay tuned for more, and have a good day.